Hi friends, welcome back to the BFG by Roald Dahl. You can find us now dream catching on page 81. This will be chapter 12, although they're not actually numbered, are they? But this one is entitled Dream Catching, and again, I'll give you a minute, or actually a couple of seconds, to get to page 81. All right, here we go. The big friendly giant put the suitcase on the ground. He bent down low so that his enormous face was close to Sophie's. "From now on, we is keeping as still as winky little missies," he whispered. Sophie nodded. The misty vapor swirled around her. It made her cheeks damp and left dewdrops in her hair. The BFG opened the suitcase and took out several empty glass jars. He set them ready on the ground with their screw tops removed. Then he stood up very straight.
Miss Bunch, please call the office. Miss Bunch to the office.
He stood up very straight. His head was now high up in the swirling mist and kept disappearing and then reappearing again. He was holding the long net in his right hand. Sophie, staring upwards, saw through the mist that his colossal ears were beginning to swivel out from his head. They began slowly waving gently to and fro. Suddenly, the BFG pounced. He leapt high in the air and swung his net through the mist with a great swishing sweep of his arm. "Got him!" he cried. "A jar! A jar! Quick, quick, quick!" Sophie picked up a jar and held it up to him. He grabbed a hold of it. He lowered the net, and very carefully he tipped something absolutely invisible from the net into the jar. He dropped the net and swiftly clamped one hand over the jar. "The top," he whispered. "The jar top, quick!" Sophie picked up the screw top and handed it to him. He screwed it on tight, and the jar was closed. The BFG was very excited. He held the jar very closely to one ear and listened intently. "Oh, it's a wing squiffler," he whispered with a thrill in his voice. It's even better. It's a fizz wizard. It's a golden fizz wizard." Sophie stared at him. Oh my," he said, holding the jar in front of him. "This will be giving some little toddler a very happy night when I is blowing it in." "Is it really a good one?" Sophie asked. "A good one?" he cried. "It's a golden fizz wizard. Well, it is not often I is getting one of these." He handed the jar to Sophie and said, "Now, please be still as a starfish now. I is thinking there may be a whole swarm of fizz wizards up here today. And do kindly stop breathing. You was terribly noisy down there." "I haven't moved a muscle," Sophie said. "Then don't," the BFG answered sharply. Once again he stood up tall in the mist, holding his net at the ready. Then came the long silence, the waiting, the listening. And at last, with surprising suddenness, came the leap and the swish of the net. "Another jar!" he cried. "Quick, quick, quick!" When the second dream was safely in the jar and the top was screwed down, the BFG held it to his ear. "Oh, no!" he cried. "Oh, mince my maggots! Oh, swipe my swoggles!" "What's the matter?" Sophie asked. "It's a troggle humper!" he shouted. His voice was filled with fury and anguish. "Oh, save our solos!" Do you think he meant save our souls? "Deliver us from weasels!" Not weasels, deliver us from evil. "The devil is dancing on my dibbler!" Whatever that means. Page 84. "What are you talking about?" Sophie said. The BFG was getting more distressed every moment. "Oh, bash my eye bones!" he cried, waving the jar in the air. "I come all this way to get lovely golden dreams, and what is I catching?" "Yeah, what are you catching?" Sophie said. "I is catching a frightsome trogglehumper," he cried. "This is a bad, bad dream. It is worse than a bad dream. It is a nightmare." "Oh, dear," Sophie said. "Well, what will you do with that?" "I is never letting it go," the BFG cried. "If I do, then some poor little toddler will be having the most curdling time." Blood curdling. "This one is a real kicksy bog thumper. I is exploding it as soon as I get home." "Oh, nightmares are horrible," Sophie said. "I had one once and I woke up sweating all over." "Well, with this one, you would be waking up screaming all over," the BFG said. "This one would make your teeth stand on end. If this one got into you, your blood would be freezing to icicles and your skin would go creeping across the floor." "It's as bad as that?" Sophie asked. "Well, it's worse," cried the BFG. "This is a real wopsy grob switcher." "Oh, you said it was a trogglehumper," Sophie said. "It is a trogglehumper," cried the exasperated BFG, "but it is also a bog thumper and a grob switcher. It is all three riddled into one. Oh, I is so glad I is clutching it tight. Oh, you wicked beastie, you," he cried, holding up the jar and staring into it. "Never more is you going to be bunk-doodling the poor little human beanie toddlers." Sophie, who was staring into the glass jar, cried out, "Oh, I can see it! Well, there's something in there." "Of course there's something in there," the BFG said. "You is looking at the frightsome trogglehumper." "But you told me dreams were invisible." "Well, they is always invisible until they is captured," the BFG told her. "After that, they is losing a little of their invisibility. We is seeing this one very clearly." Inside the jar, Sophie could see the faint scarlet, that's another word for red, the faint scarlet outline of something that looked like a mixture between a blob of gas and a bubble of jelly. It was moving violently, thrashing against the sides of the jar and forever changing shape. "Well, it is wiggling all over the place," Sophie cried. "Well, it's fighting to get out. It'll bash itself to bits." "The nastier the dream, the angrier it is getting when it is in prison," the BFG said. "It is the same with wild animals. If an animal is very fierce and you is putting it in a cage, it will make a tremendous rumpeldumpus. Still not a word. If it is a nice animal like a cockatoodle-tooloo or a froggle-hump, it will sit quietly. Dreams are exactly the same. This one is a nasty, fierce, bog-rotting nightmare. Ooh, just look at him splashing himself against the glass." "Oh, it is quite frightening," Sophie cried. "I would be hating to get this one inside of me on a darksome night," the BFG said. "Oh, so would I," Sophie said. The BFG started putting the bottles back into the suitcase. "Is that all?" Sophie asked. "Are we going?" "I is so upset by this troggle-humping, bog-thumping grob-switcher," the BFG said, "that I is not wishing to go on. Dream-catching is finished for the day." Soon Sophie was back in the waistcoat pocket, and the BFG was racing home as fast as he could go. When, at last, they emerged out of the mist and came again onto the hot yellow wasteland, all of the other giants were sprawled out on the ground, fast asleep. And that is it for today. All right, my friends, you have an assignment to do. Let's buckle down and get it done. Tomorrow we have more of the BFG. Enjoy.